Hey friends, welcome back tonight. We're unraveling the ancient, bean-flavored roots of a fairy tale you probably thought was just about a reckless boy and a very confused giant. But nope, Jack and the Beanstalk may actually go back over 5,000 years. That's right, long before bedtime stories were invented, people were already spinning tales about magic plants, sky ladders, and badly thought-out decisions. Now, Jack might be the original NFT investor, trading a perfectly good cow for a handful of mystery beans, but the real story might just involve ancient sky gods, prehistoric myths, and some suspiciously tall trees. So, before we climb into the clouds of forgotten folklore, go ahead and gently tap the like button. Subscribe if slow, slightly ridiculous history is your kind of lullaby. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from, whether you're in bed, on the couch, or lying face down on the floor of existential dread. We welcome everyone here. Now dim the lights, lower that screen brightness, and maybe switch on a fan or pretend it's 2000 BC, and the only noise around is wind blowing through a bean field. Take a deep breath, get comfortable, and prepare yourself for one of the slowest ascents into ancient storytelling you've ever slept through. This is the 5,000-year-old secret behind Jack and the Beanstalk. Let's begin. The tale as we know it. On a quiet, mist-shrouded morning, just as the first pale fingers of dawn stretched across the sleepy village, there lived a boy named Jack. His home was small and worn, nestled beneath towering oaks, whose leaves whispered softly in the gentle breeze. The wooden floorboards creaked beneath his feet as he tiptoed down the narrow stairway, careful not to wake his mother, who rested wearily in the corner room. Jack's mother was a kind woman, her face lined with years of both laughter and hardship. Their lives were simple, and sometimes difficult, but full of small moments that shimmered like drops of morning dew. On this particular day, their only cow, a gentle creature with eyes as soft as dusk, had grown too old to give milk. The cow's breath came in slow, rhythmic sighs, and Jack's mother, with a sigh of her own, decided it was time to sell her. With a small pouch of coins jangling at his side, Jack set off down the winding dirt road. The earth beneath him was cool and damp, and the soft rustling of fallen leaves echoed in the quiet air. At the village's edge, where wildflowers nodded lazily in the breeze, Jack met a stranger, a curious old man, wrapped in a cloak as green as the forest canopy. The man smiled gently and offered Jack a handful of shimmering beans, glowing softly as if holding tiny stars inside them. "Magic beans," he said, his voice barely louder than a whisper. "They will bring great fortune, but only if you trust the mystery." Jack hesitated, the sun now rising behind the hills, casting long golden shadows over the fields. The old man's eyes twinkled knowingly, and with a breath filled with hope and uncertainty, Jack exchanged the cow for the handful of beans. That evening, beneath a sky brushed with streaks of violet and rose, Jack planted the beans in their small garden. He watered the soil slowly, humming a soft tune. Through the night, the beans shimmered faintly in the moonlight. When morning came, Jack awoke to an extraordinary sight. Towering before their humble cottage was a colossal beanstalk, its emerald leaves glistening with morning dew and curling high into the clouds, twisting and turning like a great living ladder reaching for the heavens. Jack's heart beat with a curious mix of wonder and daring. He grasped the thick stalk and began to climb, the rough bark warm beneath his hands. The higher he climbed, the more the world below shrank into a quiet patchwork of rooftops and fields. At last, he reached the top, stepping onto soft clouds that felt like feathers beneath his feet. There, hidden in the mist, stood a vast castle, gleaming faintly like a dream half remembered. Inside the castle's grand halls, Jack moved carefully, the air thick with the scent of old stone and lingering secrets. He found treasures beyond imagination, golden coins stacked like tiny mountains, a harp that sang by itself with a voice as clear as a babbling brook, and a goose whose feathers shimmered with the soft light of dawn. But this castle was not empty. Deep within its shadows lurked a giant, a figure enormous and daunting, whose breath thundered like distant storms. Jack's pulse quickened, but he remembered the magic beans, the beanstalk, and the promise of fortune. With a steady heart, Jack snatched the magical treasures and fled down the twisting beanstalk, the giant's heavy footsteps shaking the clouds behind him. Reaching the ground safely, Jack's mother greeted him with relief and awe. Together, they chopped down the beanstalk, severing the giant's path to earth forever. Their fortunes changed that day, but in the quiet moments afterward, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, Jack and his mother knew something more had grown, a story of courage, wonder, and hope, waiting to be told again and again. And so the tale drifts gently into the night, just like the soft hum of a lullaby, inviting you to rest and dream beneath your own beanstalk sky. Jack. Through the ages, a folk hero evolves. Long before the beanstalk reached the clouds, and long before magical beans sparkled in eager hands, the name Jack was already weaving its way through the whispers and stories of England's folk tradition. Jack wasn't just a boy, he was a symbol, a shape-shifting figure who took many forms, each reflecting the hopes, fears, and cleverness of common people through centuries of change. Jack was everywhere and nowhere all at once. He was the clever son of a poor family, the mischievous trickster who outwitted giants, the fool who somehow found fortune, and sometimes even a stubborn, lazy soul who preferred naps over work. Yet, no matter his role, Jack was always the everyman, relatable and resilient, standing up against odds much bigger than himself. Take, for instance, Jack the Giant Killer, a legend as old as the hills. This Jack was a hero of the common folk, someone who took on enormous, terrifying giants that threatened villages and peace. But he wasn't a knight in shining armor. He was clever, quick-witted, and resourceful, using brains instead of brawn. He outsmarted the giants with cunning traps and sharp tongue, reminding listeners that sometimes wit wins where strength fails. Then there's Jack Frost, a far cooler, more elusive character who embodied winter itself. Though a different kind of Jack, this icy spirit was mischievous in his own right, painting frosted patterns on windows and nipping at noses. Like the other Jacks, he had a playful streak, reminding people of nature's power and caprice. Jack Frost wasn't evil, just untamed and whimsical, much like the folklore that shaped him. We also find Lazy Jack, a figure who, though slow to rise and slow to act, eventually found fortune through unexpected means. Lazy Jack's story is tinged with humor and gentle irony, showing that sometimes fortune favors those who take life at their own pace. He wasn't a traditional hero, but his tale was comforting, a reminder that success doesn't always come from hard labor, but sometimes from kindness, patience, or even sheer luck. But why Jack? Why did this simple name become the vessel for so many tales? The answer lies in Jack's role as the archetypal underdog, the ordinary boy caught in extraordinary circumstances. Jack was a common name among English peasants, an everyman who embodied the spirit of the people rather than the nobility. His name was easy to remember and easy to repeat, making him the perfect protagonist for oral storytelling traditions. Over the centuries, as England changed, from feudal kingdoms to bustling towns, from superstitious villagers to literate citizens, Jack changed too. In the Middle Ages, Jack was a symbol of defiance against unjust authority, often depicted outwitting greedy landlords or dangerous beasts. His stories offered hope and laughter to the poor, who saw in Jack a champion for their own struggles. As the Renaissance blossomed and print culture emerged, Jack's stories found new life in books and plays. His cleverness was sometimes softened into moral lessons for children, but his rebellious heart remained. In Victorian England, Jack became a fixture of nursery tales, still climbing beanstalks and facing giants, but also teaching lessons about courage, honesty, and ingenuity. Jack's many faces show us the layers of human experience, from fear to humor, from struggle to triumph. His stories adapted with the times, reflecting the needs of those who told them. He could be the brave boy confronting impossible odds, or the simpleton whose luck turned with the tide. Yet through all variations, Jack remained the clever underdog, the relatable figure who invites us to laugh, to dream, and to hope. In the quiet corners of villages, around flickering hearths, and through whispered conversations passed from one generation to the next, Jack's name still echoes softly. He remains a storyteller's friend, always ready to leap into adventure, to face giants, or to simply be the boy who dared to climb. The Beanstalk Before Books, Oral Legends of Sky Climbers. Long before stories were written down on pages, long before printed books filled libraries, people everywhere shared stories beneath the stars, stories carried on the wind and woven into the rhythm of daily life. Among the most ancient and enduring motifs in these oral traditions was the image of a towering ladder, a mystical tree, or a skyward vine, a living path connecting earth to the heavens. These stories of climbing to the sky are found in cultures far and wide, from the frozen fjords of Scandinavia to the sun-dappled jungles of the Pacific Islands. Though distant in place and time, they all speak with a similar voice, a voice full of wonder, mystery, and the human yearning to reach beyond the familiar world. In the far north, the Norse people told of Yggdrasil, the world tree, a colossal ash tree that stretched through the 9 realms of existence. Its roots delved deep into the underworld, its trunk stood firm in the earthly world, and its branches reached high into the heavens where the gods dwelled. Yggdrasil was no ordinary tree. It was alive with cosmic energy, sheltering creatures both wise and fierce, and acting as a bridge between life, death, and rebirth. To climb Yggdrasil was to journey through the cycles of existence itself. Far across the ocean, among many Native American tribes, there were stories of the tree to the sky, a great tree or vine that connected the earth below with the vast sky above. This sacred tree was often seen as the axis of the world, the central pillar that held the universe in balance. Shamans and storytellers spoke of climbing this tree during visions or spiritual journeys, ascending beyond the limits of human sight and stepping into the realm of spirits, ancestors, and the unknown. In the tropical regions of Africa and the islands of Polynesia, tales told of giant vines or ropes that stretched from earth to sky. These vines were both literal and symbolic pathways used by heroes, gods, or ancestors to travel between worlds. Sometimes these stories spoke of heroic climbs to retrieve sacred objects or to escape danger, echoing the tension and excitement found in many cultures' stories of vertical journeys. What ties all these stories together, whether ash tree, sacred vine, or legendary ladder, is the idea of vertical travel as a metaphor. Climbing skyward represents more than just physical movement. It is a journey of transformation, a passage from one state of being to another. The earth below symbolizes the known, the familiar, the daily world. The sky above represents mystery, the divine, or the realm of the infinite. In this way, the beanstalk in the story of Jack is part of a much older tradition, a living, breathing symbol of connection between worlds. Just as ancient peoples imagined trees or vines reaching beyond the stars, Jack's beanstalk twists and spirals upward, inviting him and us to climb toward the unknown, toward wonder, toward the magic hidden just beyond sight. Trees themselves hold a special place in the human heart. They are rooted firmly in the earth, yet their branches stretch into the vast sky, making them natural bridges between the tangible and the intangible. Their leaves whisper secrets on the wind, and their rings hold the memory of years long past. To climb a tree has always been an act of courage, curiosity, and discovery. These ancient stories remind us gently that the worlds we live in, the material and the spiritual, the visible and the hidden, are not separate, but intertwined. The beanstalk is not just a plant growing out of soil, it is a pathway, a symbol of hope and transformation, of reaching beyond the ordinary and stepping into something greater. As you imagine Jack's slow climb up that towering green vine, remember the countless storytellers across the ages who, in the quiet dark, gazed upward and dreamed of climbing to the sky. Their stories live on in the twisting beanstalk, an invitation to journey upward, inward, and beyond. Magic beans and ancient superstitions. In the quiet corners of ancient worlds, long before modern science explained the secrets of life, beans and seeds held a special place in human imagination. Small and unassuming, these tiny capsules of potential carried within them the mystery of life itself, a secret power that seemed both magical and sacred. Across cultures and millennia, beans were not just food. They were symbols, omens, and objects of superstition. The Greeks, for example, regarded beans with a mixture of reverence and fear. Ancient Greek philosophy tells us that beans were linked to the soul and the afterlife. The great thinker Pythagoras is famously said to have forbidden his followers from eating beans. Some say it was because he believed beans contained the souls of the dead, others that their flatulence disrupted mental clarity. But whatever the reason, beans were shrouded in taboo, wrapped in layers of mystery. Further east, in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, beans and seeds were woven into the fabric of everyday life and religious ritual. Planting and harvesting beans were acts of both necessity and reverence. Each seed was a gift from the gods, a tiny spark of life bursting forth from the earth's dark womb. The growing bean was a living promise, a symbol of resurrection and renewal. In those ancient fields where farmers bowed to the rhythms of the seasons, planting a seed was almost a sacred ceremony, a humble but profound communication with nature's eternal cycles. In Egypt, too, seeds carried weighty symbolism. They were linked to creation myths and the endless dance between death and rebirth. The idea that life could spring from something so small and inert captured the imagination of many. To plant a seed was to trust in the unseen forces of growth, transformation, and hidden power. Seeds and beans were metaphors for the mysteries of existence. The blackness of the soil mirrored the unknown depths of the human soul. The sprouting seed was a symbol of hope, new beginnings, and the triumph of life over darkness. People told stories to explain this marvel. How did a tiny, dry bean suddenly swell and crack, sending forth a slender green shoot that would climb toward the sun? How did the earth, seemingly lifeless beneath winter's frost, awaken each spring to burst with green life? For ancient eyes, this was nothing short of magic. In many cultures, planting was accompanied by rituals meant to encourage the spirit of the seed to awaken and grow. Songs were sung softly, prayers whispered, and offerings made to the spirits of the earth. These acts honored the unseen, reminding people that they were part of a greater cycle, one where death gave way to life, darkness to light. The slow, quiet growth of the bean plant was a daily miracle. Day after day, the shoot stretched a little higher, leaves unfurled like soft green hands reaching for the sky, and the tendrils curled delicately as if grasping for something beyond the human world. Watching this slow dance, ancient people must have felt the pulse of life itself, a reminder that beneath the surface of the ordinary lay a secret, sacred power. This reverence for seeds and beans echoes softly in the story of Jack and his magic beans. The idea that a handful of seeds could hold the key to a giant beanstalk spiraling into the clouds taps into the oldest human fascination, that within the smallest things lie the greatest mysteries. As you imagine those ancient hands planting beans in dark soil, picture the hope and faith carried in that simple act. It was a ritual as old as humanity, a whispered promise to the earth that life would continue, that magic was still real, and that every tiny seed carried a story waiting to be told. The giant, more than just a big guy giants. The word alone conjures images of towering figures, shadowing the earth with their vast size, their footsteps shaking the ground like distant thunder. But giants are much more than mere flesh and bone. Across cultures and ages, they have carried deep meanings, symbols of forces far larger than any one person. In the ancient Greek world, the Titans were giants who ruled before the gods of Olympus to took their place. These enormous beings embodied the raw, untamed power of nature and time itself, vast, eternal, and sometimes wild beyond control. Their stories tell of great struggles, battles not just for land, but for cosmic order. They were both creators and destroyers, reminding us that power can be both magnificent and dangerous. To the Norse, giants were known as the Jotnar, creatures living in the wild lands beyond the bounds of human settlement. They were often in opposition to the gods, representing chaos and the unpredictable forces of nature. But these giants were not simply villains. They were part of a larger balance, essential to the world's cycles. They could be fierce and fearsome, but also wise in their own way, embodying the mysteries beyond human understanding. In the Bible, giants such as the Nephilim appear as beings of great strength and stature, sometimes seen as the offspring of divine beings and humans. Their presence often hints at disruption, a mixing of worlds, and the uneasy balance between the sacred and the profane. They stand as reminders of boundaries crossed and the tension between order and chaos. Across these stories, giants often symbolize more than just size. They represent power that is often unreachable, overwhelming, and sometimes oppressive. They can embody greed, dominance, and the ruling classes who hold strength far beyond the common person. They are the obstacles standing between the ordinary and the extraordinary, the known and the mysterious. In the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, the giant is not just a formidable opponent, he is a symbol of all that is vast and daunting in life's challenges. Jack's daring theft of the giant's treasures becomes more than a tale of adventure. It's a quiet act of rebellion, a small but courageous stand against an overpowering force. It is the clever underdog reaching up to grasp what seems impossible, reminding us that size and strength aren't always the final word. Now imagine for a moment that these giants exist not only in stories, but also in our own lives. Perhaps your giant is a fear that looms large, a challenge that feels insurmountable, or a pressure that weighs heavy on your shoulders. These personal giants can be doubts, harsh voices from the past, or overwhelming expectations, invisible yet powerful forces that shape how we move through the world. Facing a giant, then, is not just about strength or speed. It's about courage, strategy, and the willingness to climb, step by step, breath by breath, toward a goal that feels just beyond reach. It's about recognizing that even the tallest giant has vulnerabilities, and that sometimes the smallest actions carry the greatest power. As you settle deeper into the quiet night, think of your own giants gently. What might they be? How might you, like Jack, find a way to meet them with wit, heart, and a quiet bravery? The giants of stories and the giants of life are different in shape, but alike in challenge. And in this shared struggle, there is a quiet hope. The hope that even when giants seem larger than life, the spirit within us is large enough to face them. 5,000-year story. DNA. The Indo-European thread. Stories are like rivers, flowing, changing, yet carrying the same waters through countless landscapes and ages. Among the most fascinating currents running through human history is the thread of a tale that has echoed across continents and millennia. The story of a boy who climbs toward the sky, who ventures beyond the earth to realms above, seeking something beyond the known world. Scholars and storytellers alike have traced this narrative far back into the depths of prehistory, along the sprawling lands of Eurasia, where ancient peoples spoke languages that would one day become the roots of many modern tongues. This vast family of languages, known as the Indo-European languages, stretches from the lush forests of Ireland and the rugged mountains of the Himalayas, to the sunlit shores of the Mediterranean and the icy steppes of Siberia. Within these shared linguistic roots, academics have uncovered remarkable commonalities in myths, stories told by peoples separated by thousands of miles and centuries, yet echoing similar themes, images, and motifs. One such motif is the image of a young hero ascending, climbing, or otherwise journeying vertically toward the sky. a symbolic passage from the earthly to the divine, from childhood to maturity, from the mundane to the magical. In ancient India, for example, the sacred epics and folk tales speak of young heroes who climb mountains or celestial trees to reach gods or hidden realms. These ascents are often fraught with challenges, testing the hero's courage, wisdom, and worthiness. The mountain or tree here serves as a bridge, a cosmic axis that connects the earth below with the heavens above. Similarly, in ancient Iranian mythologies, particularly those linked to the Zoroastrian tradition, we find stories of heroes scaling cosmic pillars or sacred mountains. These journeys are not just physical, but spiritual, symbolic of the soul's elevation toward enlightenment or divine truth. The hero's climb becomes a metaphor for the eternal human quest for understanding and transcendence. Traveling further west among the Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe, oral traditions tell of young men or boys who ascend great trees or mystical ladders to reach realms inhabited by gods, spirits, or ancestors. These tales are often shared during seasonal festivals or rites of passage, reminding communities of their connection to the spiritual world and the cyclical nature of life. In the far reaches of Western Europe, the Celtic myths whisper of heroes who climb sacred hills, trees, or ladders to meet otherworldly beings. These climbs often signify a crossing between worlds, a moment when the veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary thins. The journey is transformative, both a literal and figurative rising. What's astonishing is how these stories, told in widely different cultures and times, carry strikingly similar elements: the young hero's ascent, the challenge of reaching beyond, the connection between earth and sky, and the transformative nature of the journey. These parallels are more than coincidence. They suggest a shared storytelling heritage, a mythological DNA passed down through generations, evolving yet recognizable. Linguists and mythologists call this shared heritage the Indo-European mythological tradition. By analyzing ancient languages, texts, and oral traditions, they trace the roots of these stories back to a common ancestral culture that likely existed over 5,000 years ago on the Eurasian steppes. From this root, stories branched out, adapted, and took on new forms shaped by local landscapes, beliefs, and histories, yet retained their core motifs. Imagine for a moment a storyteller sitting by a fire in a remote village thousands of years ago, recounting a tale of a boy who climbs a magical tree or mountain to reach the heavens. As that story passes from one listener to another, from one generation to the next, it journeys far beyond that village. Carried by migrating peoples, travelers, and wandering bards, it weaves its way across lands and languages, growing roots in new soils. These ancient stories are slow rivers, meandering, winding, sometimes splitting into tributaries, but their essential current remains. The climbing hero is a symbol that speaks to universal human experiences, the desire to rise above limits, to connect with something greater, to face fears, and emerge transformed. When we consider the tale of Jack and the Beanstalk in this light, it becomes clear that it is not just a simple fairy tale. Instead, it is part of a vast tapestry of stories that trace back through the ages, threads woven from the mythologies of countless peoples. Jack's climb is a small echo of those ancient ascents, a modern reflection of a timeless human longing. These stories invite us to slow down and dream, to imagine the ancient world in twilight, when the boundary between earth and sky seemed thin, when trees were more than trees, they were living bridges to the unknown. To listen to the crackle of the fire and hear voices from long ago, sharing stories of boys climbing upward, step by step, toward wonder. In this dreamlike state, the differences between cultures fade. The hero's climb becomes a universal symbol, a poetic reminder that beneath the surface of history lies a shared human spirit, curious, brave, and reaching ever upward. And so, as you close your eyes and drift into rest, imagine the ancient boy climbing his skyward path, his steps light on branches that sway with the wind of countless ages. His story is yours too, a whisper from the past carrying the promise of discovery, courage, and transformation. A timeless climb that continues beyond the clouds. The psychology of the beanstalk. In the quiet moments when the world softens and the mind begins to wander, stories like Jack and the Beanstalk reveal themselves not just as tales of adventure, but as maps of the inner landscape. Beneath the simple plot of a boy climbing a towering vine to face a giant, there lies a rich psychological journey, a journey into the depths of the human soul. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist who studied the mysteries of the unconscious, offered a way to see stories like this one as symbolic expressions of the mind's hidden processes. From this perspective, the beanstalk is much more than a plant. It is a living ladder between the conscious and unconscious parts of ourselves. It is a pathway to individuation, the process of becoming whole. Imagine Jack, the young boy, as the ego, the part of ourselves that navigates everyday reality, aware and striving. He is curious, brave, and impulsive, stepping beyond familiar ground to climb the beanstalk. This climb is no simple act of daring. It is a slow, careful ascent into the depths of his own unconscious mind, a realm vast, mysterious, and sometimes frightening. The beanstalk itself stretches high into the clouds, disappearing into a misty unknown. It represents the bridge between what we know and what lies hidden within us, memories, feelings, instincts, and forgotten parts of the self. Climbing it means venturing beyond the safe surface world and entering a space where things are not always clear or comfortable. At the top waits the giant, a figure that looms large and imposing. But he is not just a physical adversary, he is the shadow, that part of ourselves we often refuse to see. The shadow contains fears, desires, and qualities we may consider unacceptable or frightening. It is the dark side of the psyche, but it is also a source of strength and truth. Jack's encounter with the giant is a symbolic confrontation with this shadow. To face the giant is to face those hidden, powerful parts within us that challenge and provoke growth. It is an act of courage to meet what we usually try to avoid, and it is necessary for transformation. But the story does not end with a simple battle. Jack steals from the giant two remarkable treasures, the golden goose and the magical harp. These are no ordinary prizes. In Jungian terms, they represent the hidden gifts and wisdom we find when we explore the unconscious. The golden goose, laying golden eggs, symbolizes the creative potential and abundance that arise from integrating the shadow. The harp, with its enchanting music, speaks of harmony, insight, and the voice of the inner self. Retrieving these treasures requires bravery and patience. Jack must navigate unknown territory, solve challenges, and trust in his own cleverness. This mirrors the psychological journey we each take when we delve into our own depths, uncovering not just fear and confusion, but also creativity, strength, and healing. The ascent and descent along the beanstalk is also significant. Climbing upward reflects the effort to become more aware, more conscious, to bring the unconscious into light. Descending back to the familiar world with the gifts shows how transformation integrates into daily life. It is a cycle of growth. Venture inward, face the shadow, gather wisdom, and return renewed. Jung described this process as individuation, the unfolding of the self into wholeness. It is not a quick or easy path, rather it is slow and layered, much like Jack's gradual climb through leaves and vines, each step cautious but necessary. Imagine yourself in Jack's shoes, standing at the foot of your own beanstalk. What parts of yourself call you to climb? What fears or doubts wait at the top like the giant? What hidden gifts might you discover if you dared to face those shadows? The beanstalk invites us to reflect gently on these questions. It reminds us that the journey inward can be just as thrilling and uncertain as any adventure in the outer world. It teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. There is a quiet beauty in the idea that our unconscious is like a vast garden or forest, mysterious, sometimes wild, but full of life and possibility. Jack's climb encourages us to be explorers of our own inner realms, to trust in the process of growth even when the way seems unclear. This story also honors the balance between the known and the unknown, the conscious self and the shadow. It suggests that to become whole, we must learn to embrace all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, the strong and the vulnerable. As you settle deeper into calm, let the image of the beanstalk linger, a green spiral reaching into clouds, a path towards self-discovery. Let Jack's quiet bravery inspire your own journey inward, step by step, breath by breath. In this peaceful reflection, the giant transforms from a figure of fear into a symbol of inner challenge, and the treasures become the rewards of self-understanding and growth. The story whispers that within us all lies a beanstalk, waiting to be climbed, and gifts waiting to be found. So, as night deepens and the mind drifts, imagine your own climb. Feel the gentle rustle of leaves, the steady pulse of growth beneath your fingertips, and the quiet promise of discovery just beyond the clouds. Why this story endures. There is something ancient and deeply human about stories. Long before books and screens, before cities and even written language, humans gathered around fires, under stars, and in quiet shelters to share tales. These stories were more than just entertainment. They were survival tools, woven into the fabric of our existence. They helped early humans make sense of the unpredictable world, gave shape to fears and hopes, and passed down wisdom crucial to survival. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk is one such tale, part of a rich tradition of storytelling that has endured for thousands of years. But why has this particular story survived? Why do we still tell it today, even in a world so different from the one where it first took root? The answer lies partly in how stories like Jack's function as emotional anchors. Familiar plots provide a kind of safety net for the mind. When we hear a story we know, our brains relax into the rhythm and structure. The rise, the conflict, the resolution. These patterns create a predictable emotional journey that comforts us in times of uncertainty. It's as if the story itself whispers, no matter what happens, there is a way through. Jack's journey up the towering beanstalk embodies this timeless pattern. At its heart is the archetypal narrative of the hero who leaves home, ventures into the unknown, faces challenges, and returns transformed. This cycle echoes the human experience of growth. We all leave the comfort of what's familiar at some point, whether that's a childhood home, a mindset, or a way of being, and step into uncertainty. Jack's climb is not just a physical ascent, but a symbolic one. It mirrors our own curiosity, our restless drive to explore beyond limits, to question the world around us, and to seek something greater. In that sense, the beanstalk is a metaphor for opportunity and possibility, a green thread reaching into the unknown, inviting us to take a chance. Yet the story doesn't end with the climb or the confrontation with the giant. Jack's return home, carrying treasures, is equally important. It reminds us that growth is not just about adventure or risk, but also about integration and balance. After exploring the vast unknown, we bring back insights, skills, and gifts that enrich our everyday lives. The tale reassures us that it is possible, even necessary, to come home grounded and changed. Another reason this story endures is its adaptability. Like a living organism, it has evolved over time, taking on new shapes while preserving its core essence. Different cultures, eras, and storytellers have shaped Jack's character and his adventures to reflect their own values and struggles. This flexibility allows the story to remain relevant, speaking to each generation in its own voice. At the same time, Jack's story speaks to universal themes: courage, cleverness, risk, and reward. These themes resonate across cultures and ages because they are woven into the human condition. The thrill of daring to climb higher, the fear of the unknown, the hope for something better. These emotions are shared by people, everywhere. Moreover, the story taps into our need for transformation. Life itself is a series of climbs and descents, moments of confrontation with giants, large and small. By retelling Jack's journey, we participate in a ritual of growth. We remind ourselves that challenges are opportunities in disguise, that boldness can lead to reward, and that even the smallest person can change their fate. The enduring nature of this tale also lies in its symbolic richness. The beanstalk itself is a powerful image, a bridge between earth and sky, between the mundane and the magical. It invites us to imagine that boundaries can be crossed, that the ordinary world holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. This invitation to wonder and possibility is a balm for the restless mind. Finally, the story's longevity is tied to the comfort it provides in the face of uncertainty. Life is unpredictable, full of unknowns that can feel overwhelming. Stories like Jack's offer a map, a reassuring framework that guides us through our own uncertainties. They say, yes, the climb is daunting, but it is also possible. Yes, the giant is terrifying, but you can face him. As you listen, imagine yourself as both Jack and the giant, the explorer and the obstacle, the seeker and the shadow. This story endures because it holds a mirror to all aspects of the self, inviting us to embrace our fears and hopes alike. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, remember the tale of Jack and the Beanstalk as more than a simple fairy tale. It is a story of human resilience and imagination. It is a gentle reminder to climb when the moment calls, to question when the path seems unclear, and to grow even when the journey is slow and uncertain. By retelling this story, we keep alive a shared heritage, a quiet, enduring spark that links us to those who came before and to the countless souls who will listen and dream long after us. Our journey tonight has taken us through misty mornings, towering stalks, and ancient echoes whispered across time. We've wandered softly through stories that stretch back thousands of years, touching distant cultures and deep parts of the human heart. Together, we traced the footsteps of a curious boy named Jack, whose climb invites us to explore not only faraway realms, but the quiet landscapes within ourselves. There is a gentle magic in these old tales, a kind of quiet wisdom passed down through countless generations, folded into the rhythms of night and day. They remind us that life, with all its mysteries and challenges, is also a journey of discovery. Every step, every climb holds its own meaning, even if we don't always understand it right away. As you rest now, let the soft pulse of this story settle around you like a warm, protective blanket. Imagine the beanstalk stretching into the sky, steady and green, inviting your dreams to rise gently alongside it, rising to places of wonder, curiosity, and calm. Remember, stories like these are more than just words. They are invitations to be brave in your own way, to face the unknown with kindness, and to carry the treasures you find deep within you back into your waking life. They remind us that even the smallest among us can reach great heights when we dare to climb. So, as your eyelids grow heavy and your breath slows, carry this thought softly with you. May your own beanstalk lead only to wonder. Sleep well, dear friend. Tomorrow holds new stories, new climbs, and new quiet moments waiting to be discovered. Good night.